Hey, this is just a quick note about our sponsor, Privado, the premier enterprise privacy platform, purpose-built to bridge the gap between privacy and engineering. Its privacy code scanning solution embeds privacy, compliance, and governance into the product development lifecycle and empowers privacy and security teams with unparalleled visibility of sensitive data flows and the insights to find and fix privacy vulnerabilities. You can leverage Privado's data flows, dynamic data mapping, privacy assessment automation, and real-time visibility of privacy issues. Enter the era of proactive privacy and transform privacy from business blocker to business enabler. To learn more, go to privado.ai.
The privacy engineering profession, what I would like to say is that keep there, keep growing, but also don't lose the view of that it's not only technology that we would like to advocate for. Eventually, the main goal is to really protect us all, whatever could be out there. So we do our best with technology, but eventually it's not only about the technology, we do it for the people.
Hello, I am Deborah J. Farber. Welcome to the Shifting Privacy Left podcast, where we talk about embedding privacy by design and default into the engineering function to prevent privacy harms to humans and to prevent dystopia. Each week, we'll bring you unique discussions with global privacy technologists and innovators working at the bleeding edge of privacy research and emerging technologies, standards, business models, and ecosystems. Welcome, everyone, to Shifting Privacy Left. I'm your host and resident privacy guru, Deborah J. Farber. Today, I'm delighted to welcome my next guest, Isabel Barberá, co-founder, AI advisor, and privacy engineer at Rhite. That's Rhite, a consulting firm specialized in responsible and trustworthy AI and privacy engineering. Isabel is a longtime leader in the field of privacy engineering. She is the industry chair for the International Workshop of Privacy Engineering, otherwise known as IWPE, member of the ANISA Ad Hoc Working Group on Data Protection Engineering, a national expert at the Dutch AI Standardization Group that contributes to ISO standards, a volunteer member of the NIST Generative AI Public Working Group, and earlier this year, she was named the Responsible AI Leader in the Netherlands by Women in AI. So in addition to advising private sector and public sector clients, Isabel also works with colleagues to conduct research on AI risk assessment tools and frameworks, and AI security threats and bias detection methodologies. And they're creating an open source AI self-assessment tool and framework. Today, we're going to discuss her work with the privacy by design, privacy engineering, privacy threat modeling, and trustworthy AI space. Welcome, Isabel.
Thank you, Deborah. It's really an honor to be here. Thanks for a really long introduction.
Well, you have so many accomplishments in your background, and I want to make sure everybody knows about them.
Thank you.
Sure. Why don't we kick it off with your origin story? How did you become interested in privacy engineering, data protection, privacy by design, threat modeling, and trustworthy AI?
So many things.
I know it's going to be hard to thread all of that together, but I have confidence.
Yeah, it's also really long ago because I'm not so young anymore. Just funny now, we are in the area of generative AI. And I studied myself like 20 years ago, computational linguistics. Really funny now to all those things coming back. Yeah, I've been working in the technical field really, really long, or in the part of software development, architecture, and security. So I'm also really curious. I always liked, but I think maybe the part of privacy is something that came to me because of I have a really strong sense of what is right, what is wrong, and I kind of remember these times when you are doing like data migrations that I was like thinking, but can we really do this? Is it really? It's another country. Can we really do those things? It's legal. So I was really busy with all those things. So yeah, that's basically how I started really long ago. I've been working really long for IBM, like more than 10 years. And then after a while, I decided just to start by myself and really focus only on privacy and security. And yeah, AI at that time was mostly big data and some machine learning. It's something that I've been touching in all my years, especially working for IBM and then later in my career also. So that when we everything started with me.
Well, fascinating. I think I share in your passion for advocating for what's right versus what's wrong.
Yeah.
It's this deep moral thing propelling me forward to respect others and to tell other people to respect other people as well. So I think we share that.
Yeah, I think it's also really, really a kind of a foundation in the field of privacy engineering. We tend to forget about that, but I personally don't see it only as a technical solution of things, but really beyond that, what kind of a responsible solution of how to implement digital solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think all privacy engineers do or have to have this sense of moral justice and right and wrong. It's interesting, just different motivators for different people. I know plenty of people like Nishant Bajaria, who wrote the Run Book for Privacy Engineering. We saw privacy as an engineering problem in his organization and really gets a lot of value out of teaching others how to solve the problem of privacy in their orgs, but doesn't necessarily have that same motivating factor of we need to move forward the field because of ethics and justice. And not to say that he doesn't have ethics or a sense of justice. It's just talking about different motivators of...
Yeah, I think we just need each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I work often in engineering teams and we need all type of profiles, but eventually I think the goal is basically the same, is to protect dignity, to protect privacy. So the technical solution is something you need, and that's why we need all these technical profiles. But I want to believe that eventually it's all towards the same goal.
Yes. So tell me, how do you see companies thinking about incorporating privacy by design strategies and tactics and privacy engineering approaches within organizations today? And I guess, are they doing what they should be doing, or how are they thinking about it? And then how should they be thinking about it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you should have asked me that question because the answer is not so good. At least in Europe, I don't really see, I don't see a lot of attention still for privacy engineering. It's true that I see, especially the last 2 years, more attention to try to build solutions in a better way, but not so. Still, we don't go so technical. Like the fact of privacy enhancing technologies is not something. I mean, it's raising, it's really growing, but still, organizations are really careful. One of the reasons is some of the solutions. There is not really how to say this. You don't really see always that they work 100%, so they don't offer you the 100% warranty. So some of them are still kind of on research models.
So some of them are still research in the lab and not necessarily deployable at scale within companies. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's one of the reasons. Another is there's a lot of implementation costs. I mean, there's fortunately not yet like one size fits all solution, and that's where I see in practice a lot of organizations want. So you arrive there, you tell them, hey, you just have to click the button, and then you have a solution here. But it doesn't work like that. You need to really do an implementation process. It sometimes takes some time, some months. What also means you need more extra cost, extra resources that need to be available, and often it's not the top of the mind of organizations. You also see a lot of focus on compliance. So as long as there's a kind of a DPO with a legal background that can more or less solve things quick, that's fine for the time being, until you can really focus on other type of solutions. Of course, this is not all organizations. I mean, especially in financial sector, I see more now in the health sector that there's really more movement towards implementing privacy engineering, but not so much as I would like to see.
Right. There's so much opportunity for educating.
That's really true.
It's great to hear your feedback, especially in the European market, because of course that's the same here in the US too, although there are some of the big tech companies are doing some more investment in processes and engineering and, which I know is more stateside. So we hear a lot more about it. I hear more about it, focusing on the space. So what's it going to take to educate companies adequately so that they start investing in privacy engineering approaches? Do you think AI is a driver?
I think maybe one of the things is maybe more collaboration between the academic world and industry is necessary. More projects that are really a mix, trying academic world trying to solve really issues from industry, but not only from really big companies, but also SMEs or smaller companies. Probably for that, we need some financial resources. We see at the European level, the data sharing strategy We see it now with all these regulations that have come, but that is really the drive to share data and to get value out of it, but still protecting individuals. So the only way to really do that is implementing privacy engineering, privacy by design. There's definitely a lack of resources, but also a lack of understanding that it's not just a technical solution and that's all. You really need to still look at the whole picture. That's what I also see now often, that especially legal teams are a bit afraid, like, well, you come with a technical solution, but there's still other things to cover. And I keep saying that, of course, that has to keep happening. You still need to look at the whole pictures to see what can go wrong here, what type of risk do you need to mitigate, what type of issues. So yeah, it's the whole story is like not one, like I said before, a solution that fits all the problems, and that's all. We still need to see that it's not easy. For that, I think that we need more collaboration, that beautiful things are happening in the academic world. In industry, we don't have chances to this type of implementations, at least not lots of organizations. So more collaboration, more financiation, more resources absolutely is necessary. And more awareness of what really is privacy engineering, or what could be eventually, it can be.
Yeah, I, for one, would love to see more profit organizations creating collaborations, whether it's standing up a nonprofit or putting money towards it, or some sort of open source cross dialogue, even with competitors, to talk about some of these things in privacy, the way that we've seen in security. Right now, I feel like no one wants to admit where they are in their process because they don't want to be critiqued by others. So, organizations aren't, unless it's some major win, come to market and use as a marketing tool, they're keeping their strategies and tactics close at hand. And unfortunately, that means like others can't learn from mistakes they've made or wins that they've had. And so definitely think we need something like that. Big advocate of it. I'd love to plug into an organization like that personally, if it existed.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So let's talk a little bit about Rhite and your work at that org, focusing on privacy by design and responsible and trustworthy AI. First, can you tell us a little bit about the company and its mission? And I know it's beyond just responsible and trustworthy AI and privacy by design, but if you could give us some background on the org, it'd be great.
Yeah, in fact, I co-founded Rhite, not so long ago, 1 year ago, in the summer of 2022. It's something I had in my mind already for so long. Like my dream really more focused on really the privacy engineering side. The way I look at privacy engineering, of course, because in the academic world, and there is a lot of focus for the technical part of privacy engineering, data protection engineering, in fact, but I wanted really to extend that to what I consider is more responsible way of building solutions, digital solutions. So not only with the attention on the data protection engineering side, but really, really beyond that, just questioning yourself, what can go wrong here? Is it really meaningful to really build this? What the impact can really cause for the individual and society? So really go beyond that. It's something I've experienced myself often working as a privacy and security engineer in teams where we were really focused on the technical side, and suddenly I had to step back a bit and think about, wait a second, what are we building here? Is this really something? What do you think people will really react about this? So what type of impact we could really cause at the short or the long term? So I think that those are things you need to, I'm sure those are things you need to really consider when you're building solutions, and not only building, when you are just going to use any digital solution. And that is why I decided to co-found Rhite. So that's basically the mission, just how to really build responsible solutions, really with society and the individuals in mind, with a technical mindset.
I really love that because it's just thinking socio-technical. It's not just like I'm building a product and here are the requirements for the product, but it's also like thinking about impacts beyond the products, thinking about the customer, thinking about society, thinking about, like you said, what's responsible and trustworthy. And so basically want to know from you, what does responsible and trustworthy AI mean?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello, loyal listeners. The Shifting Privacy Left podcast is seeking sponsors who want to help educate our growing community of privacy engineers. Position your brand in front of privacy engineers, architects, developers, researchers, and privacy tech buyers. Insert a 30 to 60 second ad like this one into every published episode of the podcast. This is dynamic content after all. Feature your new product, an upcoming conference, a sponsored special deal, endless opportunities. Email sponsorship@shiftingprivacyleft.com for more information on our sponsorship package. Okay, let's get back to our engaging privacy conversation.
Yeah, that's also a really good question because who knows that?
Yeah, what does it mean to you, at least?
It's all about responsible, or at least like before a few years ago, it was all about responsible AI. And especially, I think in the US, it's mainly was mainly called responsible AI. Then in Europe, it came the term more trustworthy AI, also with the ethical guidelines that were published. And then we had this confusion, like, but wait a second, then it's responsible AI or is it trustworthy AI? I mean, I also saw the movement in the NIST website where it's responsible and trustworthy AI. So now they use the two terms and nobody really knows, but what is really the difference? So you hear a lot of different answers to that question. I think I like to look at it like at some point, I mean, responsible, you're doing or you should be doing the right thing, maybe more related to at some point compliance. That's how I also see often more use outside. And with trustworthy, you really want to transmit that sense of to the user or the end user of you can trust what I'm doing. So I'm more transparent, not just responsible, because being responsible could also mean, okay, I'm compliant, but that doesn't mean I want to be responsible. Sometimes you can do things by law is okay, but that doesn't mean you're being responsible, thinking in the impact of for individuals. Still, there's other versions of that. Trustworthy, in terms of trust that we use a lot in security, so that the AI is robust. I will keep it just like that. Let the audience to decide by themselves. It's for myself. I don't really have an answer to that. I tend to use both. Sometimes it's more kind of a marketing thing, so you have to position yourself as responsible AI. I'm more like responsible data solutions eventually. Maybe, like I said, let's just keep it together.
Yeah, it makes sense. The only other word I don't see there that they all seem to be used interchangeably is ethical, right? So responsible, ethical, and trustworthy AI.
Yeah, I find that ethical a bit tricky because I would say more like...
There's a judgment.
Yeah, we use a lot the term, but I think in engineering teams, it's too abstract. So we want to really translate that into requirements. And eventually, I mean, you can translate it into law. I mean, we have fundamental rights. I mean, there's ways to translate that. But when it comes to just ethics, it's so I like to keep it more in the dilemmas, thinking who are your stakeholders, who are you going to have, when you're going to create impact with what you are doing, and realizing that there's some dilemmas that you could have there and that you need to give a solution, try to find a balance there. But once the answer to ethical issues, it's probably for engineers becomes too abstract, that discussion.
You're right. It kind of does. So I understand from your website that Rhite is an acronym for 5 core values. So RHITE. Can you share with us what they are, why they're important for designing and building products and services?
Sure. So the R is for responsible. I think we already talked about that. Then we have the H for human. So, of course, always the human-centered designs with the idea of course, not always, but when you are really building something that could have impact on society or individuals, that is, we consider that a core value. The I is for ingenious, meaning that you build things in a thinking on society in a responsible way. It doesn't mean that you are not using a clever, intelligent, and good way to really build things. So the technology and good inventions, it's also intelligent and it's also necessary, And I think especially in the field of responsible design, privacy engineer, inventive is something really, and creativity is quite valued. Then the T is for transparency, really important to also trust. And of course, it already implies that if you're responsible, eventually you are transparent about what you are doing. That also the support that I also strongly have for open source software, for instance. And the last one is empathy, one that I find extremely important that I don't see so often. And if you cannot place yourself on the place of the other, it's difficult that you can really build solutions that are protecting others, don't have really an impact on others. To asking yourself what can go wrong and affect others, you need to place yourself in that position to try to feel what others would feel, maybe using your technology or going through the user journey, for instance.
That's awesome. So besides being values for your company, do you, I guess, map activities and deliverables to these values so that they're shown to the clients, or are they more internal values for employees?
Just gave me a really good idea. At this moment, they were just internal values. Of course, they are also mapped in the things we do, like the assessments we do and or the tooling and the research that we are doing. So one way or the other is also mapped there. But no, I would say they are mostly internal values. And I think, you just gave me a really good idea.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, because I'm just thinking, how do you impart those values onto some of the systems and the processes that you're helping to develop for the clients? How do you embed that into what they're building? So yeah, I mean, there's an idea for the future.
That's great. Yeah. And eventually, it also depends so much on the use case, on the organization where you are. So you try to adapt to the culture of the organization, always having really clear, for instance, the importance of being transparent. So those are also important values. Also, as organization, which type of clients you want to work with.
Right.
So if some things are not really like that, then probably you don't want to be there. So it doesn't move only the design of tools, but also the way that we are ourselves, right?
That makes sense. That also just is a good reminder that internal value statements like what you've created really does help provide the constraints for who you want to take on as a client. I love that. I think that's really helpful. So many companies right now are deciding whether to bring different types of AI into their organizations in many different ways, but they are not sure which uses and deployments will bring privacy, security, and safety risks into their organizations. That said, how are companies approaching risk assessment analysis and remediation of AI harms today? And I know a lot of them might be polarized and not necessarily doing anything. So when I mean today, it could even be advice you're giving today, as opposed to what they were already doing before you gave them advice. Like, what are some of the approaches?
Yeah, and I see now, especially since generative AI, probably say more ChatGPT, it became really booming. So organizations are also wondering themselves, can I use this? Is it dangerous? You see, especially a lot of questions regarding copyright issues and the data breaches. The fact that can I really use the tool? What happens with my data? Is it going to be used by the organization to train their models? So what's going to happen here? And there's also lack of the knowledge, of the expertise, and all of these applications, if they're not open source, then it's also difficult to give the right answer. So you need to be careful with what you do. How the organizations are doing this, I see often the DPOs or privacy officers are the one asked, or maybe CISOs, also from the security departments. They're asked, I wouldn't say to do threat modeling, because honestly, it's not something I see often happening in practice, but at least to do kind of a risk assessment, look at profile of the organization, maybe kind of a threat landscape, what type of information you're going to share, what type of infra do we have, maybe to host ourselves a custom model or wherever, depending on the circumstances, and then take decisions based on that. I see a lot of confusion at this moment. And what happens also is that even the organizations would like to ask third parties for more information, they don't know what to ask.
Right.
And even if they ask, they still don't know how to analyze the information they get from them. So there's a bit at this moment like, who should really help us here? And in practice is what I mentioned before, especially legal teams, writing some guidance for teams. Be careful with this, be careful with sharing data here, there. Basically, that's how we are surviving nowadays.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like there's confusion in the market, both for those who are selling applications built on LLMs, or if they're just selling access to LLMs to an organization. There's all of these questions of like, I want to do the right thing. I want to make sure it's safe, but I don't really know what to ask. And then those who are selling it don't know how to necessarily confidently be able to explain how their clients can make it safe.
I think they're learning themselves. I think probably OpenAI would be one of the ones that you can say the last month is learning more for all the things that are happening, all the questions they get. And then they realize, oh, we have to implement this, we have to do this. And I think that's what's happening nowadays in the AI world. I mean, all these companies are learning themselves. Yeah, suddenly there's compliance, there's rules, data privacy that some of them I also forgot that was there. Things just happened really, really fast. I should say, yeah, it's a pity because at least data protection law is something we already have there. And I see it, for me, there's no difference, no matter if you're building AI, you're building any other application. But I see, especially in the world of AI, among the startups, there really just the lack of knowledge, awareness that they have to do things, well, probably in a different way, or at least have really a kind of an assessments that think themselves, what should I comply? Is my product even going to be eventually, am I going to be able to launch into the market, especially later when we have the UAI Act forced? And yeah, that's what I see now in practice. I see especially that the lack of awareness, lack of understanding. There's really the focus on the technology, the solutions are really cool, a lot of them, but without really paying attention to other things are important. So it's a learning process. They will need to learn, and I just hope in the meantime not too many issues and incidents happen.
Yeah, it's definitely growing up. And I think I've never seen a technology come to market so quickly where everyone's trying to run and figure out how to use it in a way that not only is it making it safe, but that they can avoid regulatory problems in the future.
And so accessible also, because there's a lot of open source AI available too.
That's a good point. It's accessible for no matter what your budget is, you can find access and capabilities to leverage it. Yeah. That said, what activities are required for organizations to feel confident that they have built AI responsibly? Like, how do you guide organizations through this? Or what are the steps they need to take to feel that they built it responsibly?
Of course, yeah, I'm an advocate of threat modeling, so I would say at least try to find out what could go wrong with your ID. That is something that when I mentor startups, I try to do a session. I do a session with my PLOT4ai threat modeling game, and they come immediately to, it's like an eye-opener, like, oh, suddenly I see this, so we should correct this, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. Of course, taking care of your own governance and your data quality, for instance, those are things that I see in practice, they don't happen.
So talk to me about that, the data governance aspect then.
Yeah, well, especially in startups, it's something that you really don't see.
Right.
I mean, they don't even think about that. I mean, you have the data scientists, the machine learning engineers, everybody's doing their stuff, sharing the models. I mean, there's not really an understanding that the things also need to be protected. Who is responsible for what, who has access to, I don't know, for instance, to certain data sets, who could be, for instance, have access to certain models to change parameters. I mean, all those things should be, if you have an audit trail, you have control. Yeah, that of course, that helps to avoid issues. I think I also see in practice a lot of lack of understanding of what can go wrong with bias, for instance. I mean, we all talk about bias, discrimination, but later the teams don't know very well how to test that for that. And there's a lot of tools there, but of course you need to know which tool for your specific use case. You need to know how to interpret the results of that. So it's also really a lack of understanding. And of course that is when you can, eventually you can have issues. But you need to also monitor what you are doing. So that is kind of part of the governance. So you keep monitoring your pipelines in order, you keep monitoring what you are doing. You can react to incidents. You are able to see that. I mean, that type of responsibility built in your process where you can supervise what is happening and you can react when something is wrong. It's something that I don't see often in practice. And eventually, of course, it depends what you are building. I mean, here we talk about eventually you have some risk. But I see that, I mean, not only in AI, in any type of software, we try to build things in a structured way, understanding what's access here, all these controls you build around your whole architecture. So, I mean, why not with AI? We tend to forget that it's not so different. It's just a technology. So it has to grow in maturity in that sense.
I suspect that it will grow into, and there'll be frameworks and such that help with this at a global or at least even a national levels, the global, maybe an ISO standard. But these things take time. So until we actually have official standards for these things or frameworks from from government and collaborative public sector, private sector collaborations. Right now, we just got to start dealing with best practices to achieve the goals and learning from one another and all that. And so I know that you, together with some colleagues at Rhite, are working on creating an open source AI self-assessment tool and framework called SARI, or SAR-AI. Is that it?
Yeah, eventually it's just Sarai. That is kind of the name of a girl. But what it means is self-assessment tool for responsible AI. So the acronym is Sarai.
There you go. That you're going to be publishing next year. Cool. So tell us more about this effort. What do you hope it accomplishes?
Sarai is kind of an extension of PLOT4ai. And we didn't talk about that, but
we'll talk about that next. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go first to the future. It's also good. But PLOT4ai says, I need to mention this for everybody to make sense what Sarai is. But PLOT4ai is a library of AI risks. It contains more than 80 different risks, and they are categorized in 8 different categories. And the thing is that what I thought already more than 1 year ago is what I see, there's a lot of need for understanding how to really implement responsible AI at a more global level. So not only at organizational level, but also at your product level, your model level. I would say that a lot of the information is already out there, and a lot of the things are not so different of what we usually do in practice, especially if your organization is a bit more mature. But there's a lot of blah, blah, blah. Everybody talking about responsible AI and ethics and this and that, and a lot of abstractions, really important things like the protection of fundamental rights. But when it comes to engineering teams, to organizations, there's a lot of confusion. Like, I really need to do this? How to do this? It's something so different that there's no really guidance about that. What I started to make was based on the risk plot for AI. I create controls. There's more than 100 controls. And for every control, you have mitigation, a recommendation to mitigate that specific risk, also coming from PLOT4ai, some of them, and also a recommendation to collect evidence. So basically, the system tells you, by having this type of evidence, you could be basically implementing that control. So that will really help you to implement this control and then eventually prevent this risk. There's a lot of a complex data model behind Sarai, because it integrates all what it comes into our hands. So it's from what is available in terms of standardization to ethical frameworks to always there. We have tried to make a division and a categorization of the controls that makes sense. So eventually, Sarai contains 6 blocks, every block covering different principles and different controls. So the idea with Sarai is that it will help you as an organization to understand what type of protocols, processes you could implement to really comply with controls that will help you to avoid certain risks. And that, like I mentioned before, at the organizational level, product level, no matter, there's 2 different sections if you are building the tool, if you are purchasing a tool, and eventually at model level. Quite complex, like I said, but eventually pretends to be really easy, just really easy to understand tool that can help everybody to set the first steps towards responsible AI. And I mentioned it before, I'm really fan of open source. And when I have things really clear in my mind, I like, with help of my college, working often in our free time to really deliver things that we think this can really help the community. And eventually the goal is simply to protect individuals, to avoid risks, and to make things easier for everybody, and get a bit out of this Wild West, especially in AI world that I see lastly, where everybody's trying to sell solutions and do things, and sometimes are necessary. But I think first you need to have an understanding of what you need and all the things that are already there, already open source, and for instance, like the model cards, data sheets. I mean, all those things are there. If you facilitate a way to have those things, to integrate it with Jira, I mean, there's things to really make life much more easier for organizations, and not only startups, but for everybody. So that's the essence of Sarai.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing for Sarai is that it's not just a self-assessment tool and framework, but it also helps you based on that assessment with your next steps and like what tools to use and how to integrate with things to achieve goals.
Yeah, it's much more than self-assessment tool. It will also provide you with maturity level assessment. So it helps you also to grow as an organization, because it's under the assumption that not all evidence need to be provided. Like I said before, there's the complex data model there, because all this is also based on the type of tool that you want to build or the type of tool that you want to purchase. So there's kind of a risk analysis behind, and that is why, depending on that, you need to cover for certain controls and certain risks. And then you can really grow, in that sense, your organization towards a more mature level. So the tool contains several things. What we plan to release beginning next year is the tool, not the technical tool, but just the information. So the model for people just to use it. And we are on the side also building a tool, because it will be much more easier to have these assessments and controls or just digitally. And that will take a bit longer. That won't be the beginning of the year. But
so sometime next year, you'll publish the tool, is what
yes.
But first, you'll publish the framework.
I believe, especially smaller organizations, I believe they will benefit from the digital version. But I think everybody can benefit already from what we are going to publish. So why not?
Yeah, that helps also just educating the industry. It just helps everybody. I love it.
Exactly.
Thank you for all that work. Okay, so let's turn our attention to privacy threat modeling. What motivated you to focus on threat modeling for privacy? And I think you mentioned before it is a subsection of privacy engineering, but why is that a feature for your consulting firm?
Yeah, it's identifying risk is kind of a foundation for whatever you want to build. That's how I see it. And it also, I think probably I mentioned it before, kind of the foundation of what makes you really build responsible solutions. I mean, if you don't question yourself, what can go wrong here? And you make that step back, like I said before, and see, hey, wait a second, what is the impact here beyond that? Then it's really difficult to really build possible solutions. Yeah, why threat modeling? I've been working in the field of risk management already really long, I think from the beginning of my career. And I always like to do it in teams and to brainstorm about, okay, let's think, what can go wrong here? Of course, in security, when I also have a security background. So if you use, for instance, the famous Rhite, then of course it's a different way of approaching it, more often from the threat actor position, the attacker, and you, most of the times, at least that's how I mostly experience in the sessions, you need people with more of that kind of ethical hacker or technical knowledge. But when I do risk management from any other solution that is not only looking at the security side, but just you need to create an impact assessment. And that is something I remember very well in working for IBM, was like always the first step in every project. We had to create an impact assessment. And for me, I know for some colleagues was like, well, you just do alone your impact assessment. And I never agree with that. So I don't have all the knowledge. We need to sit together with some stakeholders. We need to look at what is the impact of this, what we want to build here. And that has been one way or the other the beginning in my career. Like I said, it's always, I see it like really a foundation of what you're going to do in your next step. To ask about privacy specifically, I've been working with Lindum long. And
yeah, tell us what Linden is, because we did one episode on it with Kim Vutz, but
Kim Vutz, yes.
She's wonderful. And everyone should listen to that episode as well to learn about the Linden threat model framework. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what Linden is, just for the listeners who did not hear that episode.
Yeah, Linden is a privacy threat modeling framework. I would say more focused on the development of software, all type of software. Though for me personally, it's probably not the best solution for artificial intelligence. In fact, that's the reason why I eventually created PLOT4ai. And Lindum has also the section called Lindum Go. So it's a more kind of light version methodology that gives you also, it provides you also with a set of card decks. And that is really nice because that's also what inspires me to create PLOT4ai. So with the cards, it really helps and motivates the teams to thinking what can go wrong in the data flow diagram that you designed beforehand. So that is, I found always really nice to work, and I have in that sense good experience with the teams where I've worked using Lindum, and that is what moved me eventually. Like I said, to create a PLOT4ai. I know in 2019 I was using one of my projects, and I realized, no, I have to extend it. I'm missing. I was aware of threads that I couldn't in the methodology itself. And that is eventually, that was the reason for me to extending the game into what became in 2022 PLOT4ai.
That's awesome. And I'm definitely going to be asking you next about PLOT4ai and just set the scene. Yeah, sorry, I put it at the end. So to set the scene, Isabel's talking about cards that are a card game based off a 3-year research project that you've done. And it's called PLOT4ai, which you'll talk about in a second, which is an open source privacy library of threats for AI, which contains more than 80 AI threats with recommended mitigations. And that's so cool, right? I want to hear more about this because my audience of privacy engineers are certainly going to be excited about what you're putting together here. So you gave us a little bit about your background and why you felt you needed to create PLOT4ai, because either the Linden threat model is more aimed at software development and doesn't really focus on the AI space. Anything more around the background you want to talk about there, or what PLOT4ai maybe stands for before I ask you a few other questions?
Yeah, eventually it's privacy library of threats for artificial intelligence. So I try to make a kind of acronym with the word plot. That is also, of course, often used in statistics in general. But something important maybe to mention about PLOT4ai is that when I was researching on threats related to AI, I realized I really had to go out of I wouldn't say my comfort zone, but of what we are more used to seeing frameworks like Lindum, where we look really more pure at the privacy engineering issues. Of course, there's also compliance threats, but with AI, it's so extensive. You have a lot of issues related to human rights, for instance, possibility to cause harm in that sense. And it goes beyond that, safety, also a lot of really more technical specific issues, or just for saying security. That is also not all security, of course, because in general is basically the same one that with any other technology, but they're really threats really specific for AI, and that makes it that it becomes so kind of a monster. So when I was researching on this, I realized to make it more accessible and to keep investigating this, so would become kind of a way for me as a consultant advisor, so to build my own library of threats for artificial intelligence, like I mentioned, kind of an extension of Lindum to make it work for myself. It became really a 3 years research until eventually I published it. It keeps being developed. All what comes into my hands, all guidance or new standards, or what is there, I updating it in PLOT4ai. And it's based on more than 200 sources of information. So based on all that is how I identify risks and I categorize those risks. I kept the essence of Lindum, so I've used similar colors for the cards, and also maintain some of the names of the categories of Lindum, like for instance non-compliance or unawareness. So all that comes from Lindum, but eventually it has its own identity also.
Yeah, I definitely want to get my hands on this card game. So we'll talk about that afterwards, but I want everyone to know, and I'll also put links to PLOT4ai and the game and the entire library. That link I'll put in the show notes so everyone can have access to it. And the game costs, according to your website, €25. I want to give you my money, hand it over to you, because this is really helpful, even just to have them on hand as I talk to other people. But I would also love to play the game. That sounds like fun. I also want to put out here that I want to read what the categories are. You've created 8 different categories across 4 different aspects of the AI model creation. So the design, input, modeling, and output stages. And
yes.
So I just just want to state quickly like what they are for the audience. So in the design phase, you'd be looking at technique and processes and accessibility. In the input stage, you'd be looking at identifiability and linkability, as well as security. In the modeling stage, you'll look at safety and unawareness, which I'm going to ask you about in a second as to what that is. And then output stage, you're going to look at ethics and human rights issues, as well as non-compliance with whether it's laws, your own standards within your org, but just non-compliance issues. What is unawareness in the modeling stage?
Yeah. And awareness is lack of information. So it's basically all risk related when you are not giving the right information to individuals or data subjects with privacy. Just I need to make a small correction to all what you said, because you mentioned all the categories for PLOT4ai. So it's true, all the 86 at this moment risks or threats, are categorized in these 8 categories, classified in these 8 categories. The further categorization in the phases of design, input, modeling, and output, it's just per threat. So what you see, the game just gives you a suggestion in which phase of the development lifecycle of the AI it's more probable that threat will arise. So it's not that the specific categories that appear and that are specific from a development lifecycle. It's just that some specific threats could appear or in all the phases of the development lifecycle or only in 2 of them. So that is more the suggestion.
I see. So these are the threat categories that would be presented at those stages.
Exactly. So with every card from PLOT4ai, it indicates you to which category it is. For instance, I don't know, like a threat could be from the category accessibility. And then you can see on the right side of the card that for instance, appears more often during design phase and the output phase. So that helps you to, when you are doing your threat modeling, that you know if you are already in the phase with your data preparation or you're already building your model, that threat, of course, it keeps just being a suggestion, but that probably you don't need to go through it again because it appears mostly in design phase or during the output phase. So you will need to do it again, to use the card again during the output phase, once you have deployed your systems, for instance.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that correction. So I know that this is open source. How can others contribute to PLOT4ai, and what type of perspectives are you seeking?
Yeah, it's all together with my partner. We built a website. Also, everything is in GitHub, so everybody can collaborate, work in GitHub, send feedback, send new threads, send corrections. Because PLOT4ai, of course, is based on all analysis of, like I mentioned before, a lot of sources of information, but also my own expertise. And of course, I'm not here the guru. I mean, I don't know everything. And there's awesome people there outside that can really share their knowledge and make it, a community-driven tool that's eventually the IT. And the same goes for the card game. You mentioned before about the €25. I really sell the card game without profit. So it's the same I get from the printer. So I divide the amount of boxes that I bought, and that's how I sell it. So I've always, the privacy engineering profession, what I would like to say is that keep there, keep growing, but also don't lose the view of that it's not only technology that we like to advocate for. Eventually, the main goal is to really protect us all, wherever could be out there. So we do our best with technology, but eventually it's not only about the technologies. We do it for the people. And regarding AI, just collaborate with with PLOT4ai, and it will help to create a more wisdom world of the AI, as to like that. Let's make it fun. But it would be really grateful if the community grows.
I agree. I think those are great words of wisdom, that there are humans behind the personal data. And I think that's uniquely different from other areas like security, obviously you have to protect, secure people, but a lot of security is about securing systems and networks and things that have nothing to do with personal data, right? So all privacy is contextual, and all privacy has to do with, and data protection has to do with people behind the technology. And so I think that's a great way to close today, to remember to think of the people and protect them.
It's a beautiful word, and I think sharing is caring. So let's work together to make it better.
Well, thank you, Isabel, for joining us today on the Shifting Privacy Left podcast.
Thank you, Deborah, for doing such a great job for advocating for the profession.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And until next Tuesday, everyone, when we'll be back with engaging content and another great guest or guests. Thanks for joining us this week on Shifting Privacy Left. Make sure to visit our website, shiftingprivacyleft.com, where you can subscribe to updates so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found this episode valuable, go ahead and share it with a friend. And if you're an engineer who cares passionately about privacy, check out Privado, the developer-friendly privacy platform and sponsor of this show. To learn more, go to privado.ai. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode. Bye for now.